Are you ready for the best damn radio show on the planet? Man Hour Nation, rise up.
You know on the beat every time, no. I would like to personally welcome you to Man Hour After Dark. Say that thing. Why I bring you the host, Mike, Buck, and Cone. You know who's coming to the stage. Sports talk than what you about to hear right here. I second that.
Go. You know that it's us when we talking about sports. Giving you facts on the field to the core. Tune in, we need the support. 1 hour too short, then listen some more. On all your stations, not dropping no music. Starts like Adidas, but Nike just do it. Down 4 in the 4th, we go for the win. Michael 2 seconds, we taking it in. Buck, Mike, and Combs, you know what's going on. Man, now we're After Dark, no LA, we the big spark. No 4th and inches won't cut short. Got the best talking, it's all sports. Buzzing more than buzz beaters. We coming live all through your speakers, go.
And what is going on, Man Hour Nation? It's your boy, Beastie Brandon Combs, coming to you live on this Monday. Guys, if you guys have not heard yet, we are now on Roku TV, Monday through Friday. That is on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. We debuted today. It was good stuff out there. A lot of interaction. A lot of people reaching out, letting us know that they were watching. A lot of people seeing us on the Roku TV. They're telling me that they were putting up reviews and all sorts of stuff. So trying to get that channel going. So if you have not seen it, head to Roku TV. Head over to the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. And we, just give them some love. Give them a little bit of some likes, some shares, and a couple of reviews would be great. Helps us out, helps us know that we're doing well, and helps us more than you know. It's, it costs a lot of money for us to do what we're doing, but it doesn't cost you guys anything to hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the share, and do a couple of reviews. So please feel free to help us out doing all you can. Speaking of helping us out, I'm by myself tonight, but the real Kev, our normal Monday night guest, has stepped up, and he's here to help me out for the first hour. So let me go ahead and bring him on. Kev, man, what's going on, boss?
How's it going, man? Another day. Hope you had a happy New Year. Had Merry Christmas, all that good stuff. I couldn't be on last week because it's just been a craziness with these holidays, but everything's everything. I'm happy. I'm excited to get back with you guys. Congrats again on you guys being on Roku TV, and let's get it going.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Which means you're going to be on Roku TV tomorrow. So feel free to plug in your spot at any point. That way, people know where to find you as well.
Yeah, 100%. The Bottom Line podcast, part of Belly Up Sports Network. At some point, we'll be switching over to Capital Broadcast Company podcast network. But yeah, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff, iHeartRadio, et cetera, et cetera. It is important to understand that you can find it pretty much anywhere. There's a lot of important news, things we do hear about, things we don't hear about. We dive into it over there at the Bottom Line. Currently on pause until we figure out this network stuff. So in the meantime, go catch up on the old episodes so you kind of understand what the feel is about. And then from there, when we get back rolling, you'll be caught up and we can roll.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I enjoy listening to your stuff. We enjoy the segments that we have with you every Monday. So it was really awesome of you to step up and help me out tonight, because sometimes doing a solo show, man, that's, as you know, that's pretty tough. You're sitting there talking to yourself. So
it's crazy. Like you'd be surprised if I went into like some of the details behind the things I have to do to make sure that it doesn't sound like I'm talking to a wall. When you don't have a producer or somebody else on another mic to respond, it gets a little difficult. So you have to figure out a different way to present what you want to say. And, but once you get it, you got it. And it just helps everybody expand. Yeah.
And speaking of talking to yourself, I kind of want to get into Antonio Brown here a little bit. Look, we all saw, if you haven't seen yet, I don't know, why you're watching a sports talk show, because you clearly don't watch sports. If you have not seen what Antonio Brown did on the field yesterday. But for those of you who have not seen it yet, Antonio Brown, all we saw at the time was him taking off of his uniform, taking off his pads, and throwing stuff into the crowd, and then doing jumping jacks in the end zone and walking off on his team. Later on, come to find out that, one story says that, he was told to go in the game. He refused to go in the game. And so they told him, to go ahead and leave. And then another story comes out that says, Antonio Brown didn't feel like his ankle was up to par and didn't feel like he was healthy enough to play. And so then they said, if you're not healthy enough to play, then you need to leave. And that's when he left. Now, I don't know about you, Kev, but I'm all about logic, right? Like I usually don't just hear one side of the story and then just make up my mind off of one side of the story. I don't just, I like to get facts from both sides of the fence, and then I make up my mind as to what does logic tell you? You know what I mean? Like who do you think is right and who do you think is wrong? And I just, for one, if he didn't feel like he was healthy enough to play, his ankle seemed pretty healthy as he was doing jumping jacks and, skipping off the field and waving to the fans. I'm not so sure that the narrative, that the third story that I've heard, where they were starting to freeze him out because he was close to about $1 million in bonuses. And when you start to think about it, and this is the first time the Tampa Bay organization has been accused of this, by the way. It's about the third or fourth time they've been accused of freezing players out when they get close to their numbers on making their bonuses. So let me ask you, Kev. I mean, you follow sports, you follow Antonio Brown. What is your opinion as to what happened? Who do you think is right and who do you think is wrong in this situation?
So I'm with you on the logic point. You want all angles of the story. You want all the information you can get. Okay, we're yet to hear, outside of the brief post-game comments, we're yet to hear from Bruce Arians about what these reports say and how true or untrue they are. We're yet to hear from Antonio Brown about what these reports say. He hasn't been cut yet as of this second, Monday night, 8:08 Eastern. He hasn't been cut yet. So there's obviously, it ain't just as simple as, how it sounds in high school where a coach is like, you know what, go to the locker room. Like, I'm done with you today kind of thing. The initial reports at first were, they're trying to keep him from hitting his milestones. Well, if they're trying to keep him from hitting his milestones, that's all the more reason to keep him on the bench, not ask him to come in the game. Right. Oh, well, Antonio Brown refused to come in, so we're done. Oh, well, Antonio Brown's ankle's not healthy. He didn't feel he was, healthy enough to play, so he said he's done. And it's all weird because, he played last week with a 100-plus yard receiving game last week. And with all these weapons, all these weapons missing, I find it hard to believe that Tampa Bay would look and be like, oh, over $1 million. Right? Like these are organizations that pay these players all this money. Like, what is $1 million? Like, are we really trying to, pinch pennies over $1 million? And when I say that, I understand people watching like, yeah, it's a lot of money. I feel it's a lot of money too. But for this, what we're talking about here, $1 million, like, what does an organization do? Like, what does that extra $1 million do that they don't give to Antonio Brown? What does that do for them? Right? Does it get them a couple of new hot tubs in their recovery room or something? Like, what are we really talking about here? We're talking about $1 million, guys. So, I'm not necessarily no theory about what is going on to me holds enough traction in any direction to make me feel like that's the actual way that things go about. Right. And so, of course, like, the first thing people were like, oh, he's crazy. And then those same people were like, oh, I'd have done the same thing. And it's kind of like, all right, like, how about instead of us reacting to the first story every time it comes out, how about we like let it all come out first? So I don't know. If I had to guess, I think, we understand, like, Antonio Brown has a tendency to self-sabotage. Okay, are we going to blame the Raiders for the fact that, all he had to do was shut his mouth for 24 more hours and he had a full season salary guaranteed and he couldn't do that? Are we going to blame the Raiders for, his issues with the domestic violence stuff? Are we going to blame we can go down the list.
Are we going to blame the Raiders, for that? No, but let me ask you a question. Can we blame Vontaze Burfict for it?
It's possible we could. Look, man, CTE is a real thing. CTE is one of those things that you don't really realize until, like, a lot of players when they die, and they were kind of dealing with those effects in the background, like nobody knew. This is the first time where we're seeing this in person, like live, like while someone's still playing.
Right.
And of course, that's all of our first reactions. But at the same time, we have to be careful because we can't just be out here saying, "Hey, man, he's got CTE." Like, ain't none of us doctors. Obviously is mentally impaired. Like we can't just be out here saying that. So we can speculate. And I understand the jokes are funny, but at the same time, this is also a guy who, his entire life has been one of the most, if not the most talented player anywhere he's played football. So he has been told his entire life that what you're doing doesn't really have much consequence because you're good at football. Right. And you can tell that he had that mindset leaving Pittsburgh. You can tell he had that mindset in Oakland, and you can tell he has that mindset now.
So let me ask you this then.
In the end zone, doing jumping jacks and saying peace because, hey, no matter how stupid I'm acting, I'm still Antonio Brown. That is his thing. And that's where that's kind of where we have to be careful because he does have this tendency to self-sabotage. So
we're just speculating on the CTE front, right? How much responsibility does the NFL have to step in here to say, you know what, we think something might be up. Let's get you tested, see where your CTE stands. And if there is something seriously wrong, we need to help you out with this. I know it's not the NFL's way. They've never done that. They really don't care about their players, and we say it all the time. But I feel like the NFL at this point has to step in and be like, look, there is a reason for some of your behavior. And if it's CTE, then that's on us. And if it's not CTE, let us help you get the help that you need, whether it's with a therapist, whether it's with whatever, else there is. But at least then we know, there's a cause for this man's actions, because you're right. I mean, look, some of the jokes are funny. Like I've seen some of them out there, and I look at some of these memes that the internet is brutal when it comes to this stuff. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes you see stuff like I saw one earlier in the day that said, if this job was a person, and it had Antonio Brown in the end zone doing the jumping jacks, right? Like some of that stuff is kind of funny, but CTE is not funny, man. CTE has taken the life of guys that lived great lives. CTE has taken. I mean, you watch a guy like Junior Seau, like CTE took that man's life. And I don't want to see that happen to Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown was a great talent. Antonio Brown is a human being. Antonio Brown is a person. So I think the NFL has an obligation to figure out what's going on with this man. And even if it's not CTE, get him the help that he needs and help him get the help that he needs to get there. We see it in other sports. We've seen it in basketball. The most recent one with Mark Cuban trying to get a former player right and getting him off the snide and helping him out. the NFL just doesn't seem to do that. But to me, they have an obligation to do so.
So here's the thing. Here's the problem. Like, if what you're asking is possible, I feel like it would be a feasible ask. But the thing about CTE is that you can't diagnose CTE while someone's alive. Reason is because the thing that tells you whether they had CTE or not is something inside the skull, right? So the only way is when they die and their skull is empty, you can see, oh, there's divots here or whatever it is exactly. It can be suspected, but and so that's where the assumptions can kind of come in.
Oh,
but
see, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
That's why, like, when you find out someone had CTE, it's always after they're dead, because that's when you actually you have access to their skull. So that's where that comes in. And so it kind of sucks because it's like, oh man, what can you do? And there's not a lot you can do. Obviously people will point to the Vontaze Burfict hit where he just pretty much tried to take his head off as the hit. And again, it's possible. But again, like Antonio Brown, Ryan Clark told the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, don't pay him. The Pittsburgh Steelers had to choose between Antonio Brown and Mike Wallace. They chose Mike Wallace. Was like, oh, I want, like, they both threw up for an extension. They could only choose one, blah, blah, blah. They chose Antonio Brown. And Ryan Clark said it was a mistake because this type of stuff, the type of way Antonio Brown was acting behind the scenes that we didn't see is the way that he's acting now. When he got to Oakland was so desperate for a wide receiver that they could do whatever with and throw the deep ball to, and John Gruden had plays drawn up for and all this stuff that they were willing to let him do whatever. And again, that's how you get to that point. Yeah. Once he got out of Pittsburgh and he was like, oh, I can do what I want now. Like, all of a sudden, all this stuff came out. And again, we can say all we want about, oh, CTE this, CTE that, but like, it very well could just be that this is just kind of his entitled nature on top of his childish nature, all mixed together. And I mean, Kyrie Irving is Aaron Rodgers is a bit out there. None of us are hollering that he's got CTE.
Well, and it's not like he wasn't it's not like he was a model citizen before the Burfict hit either, right? I mean, was his rookie year. He got in that fight with Troy Polamalu on the field during practice or something like that. He's not always been the perfect person, and so some of it maybe just thinks that, hey, maybe this is just who this guy is. Maybe this is just his mentality. But either way, man, it's sad to see what this talent has become. We talked about it last night. Is he the most wasted talent in NFL history? And I pointed to a guy like Josh Gordon, who I feel is more of a wasted talent than Antonio Brown was. I mean, at least Antonio Brown went out and won a Super Bowl and did some things. But it's sad to see either way. But before we get to our first break here, I want to get into some of these comments, man. The comments are lighting up. One Pride 40, he says he definitely thinks it was that shot from Burfict that did this. He asked how close, in another comment, how close he was to his bonuses. So yeah, I mean, you had 6 catches, I believe, away from 33K, something like 50 yards away from 33K, and 1 touchdown away from 33K.
Yeah, it was 300.
Oh yeah, 333K. Yeah, so each one added up to about $1 million.
Coming into the game, 8 catches away from that incentive, 55 yards away from that incentive, and a touchdown away from it. And again, like, this is the same guy who come, midnight of opening day, and he had his full salary guaranteed for the year and couldn't keep his mouth shut for 24 more hours after all the nonsense he had even been through previously leading up during the offseason with the feet. And remember, this is also the guy who threw a hissy fit because he couldn't wear a certain helmet, right? Like, all this stuff. And that was in Oakland, which is, I guess, now Vegas. again, this is a guy who tends to self-sabotage. Like, I don't think that it is much different than that. The other thing people got to remember about CTE is one hit doesn't give you. Times have been hit in the head, but if this was, like Anquan Bolden, remember he got lit up in the end zone against somebody one time when he was playing for the Cardinals, and he was down and he had to like get his whole face surgically repaired, But that was the only real hit that he ever took. And, no one was hollering about him having CTE. Like it's
right.
I wouldn't. It seems like the easy thing to say, the popular thing to say right now. Oh, CTE is a real thing. Oh, blah blah blah. But like, it could just be like, this is a childish man. Again, he's been given pretty much anything he's ever wanted, due to the fact that he's better at football than most people. And Bruce Arians, we know Bruce Arians. He ain't having that nonsense. He's not doing that. And on top of that, after all of this, do we really think that the Buccaneers brought in Tom Brady to play with people's money and play with game results? Like, we lost Chris Godwin for the year. Leonard Fournette is out. Like, we're struggling. We're reeling here, trying to just limp to the playoffs to make another run. We brought in Tom Brady, and we're gonna do stuff like bring in, because Mike Evans is dealing with a hamstring. We're gonna his one pretty much most reliable weapon right now. We're gonna pull him out because we don't want him to get his catches.
Right.
And we got Tom Brady over here. Like, if Tom Brady says, "Dude, put him in the game," they're gonna put him there.
Right. And I see you guys in there. I see Alpha Rob's in the chat. I see Drew's in the chat. Buck's been in the chat. Michelle's been in the chat. Appreciate you guys for chiming in. Alpha Rob says CTE is an excuse. How about maybe he's just out there? He's just like those Hollywood people that does crazy things.
That's a good point, Rob. Like I said, or Alpha Rob that's a good point. We all know weird people, right? And when I say weird, I don't mean weird. I just mean weird. Like, anybody we see that seems to think is different. They're having a different opinion is one thing. Having a way out their opinion is where we start calling weird. So when I say weird, I use that term loosely, but I don't mean it derogatorily or anything of that nature. So we all know people who it's like, oh, he's a bit out there. He's a bit extra. He's a bit different.
Yeah.
And, it's easy. And like I said earlier, it's easy to point to CTE just because it's the easiest thing to say right now. But in reality, it could just be, some of these celebrities, they don't take showers, right? Like we saw all that stuff. It could be one of those.
Yeah. So we're up against the break here. We're going to get to our first break. And when we come back, we're going to get into some stuff that Kev wants to talk about. It's his weekly segment here with The Real Kev. So staying with us, we will be back in 2 minutes. And we are back. It's your boy BC Beastie Brandon Combs, along with the real Kev. All right, Kev, you've got some stuff on your mind. We've already talked about some Antonio Brown. Give me something you want to talk about here.
I've been saving this topic strictly for you guys. I've been sitting on this topic for months, saving it for when you're finally on Roku TV and all that good stuff, so we could talk about it, because everybody was all excited when this stuff came out. Everybody was like, oh, finally, they're getting what they deserve, this, that, and the third. This is just fantastic. And I'm here to tell everybody that, in my opinion, it's a bit of a scam. And that is name, image, and likeness for college football players. And just like the being able to be paid on your name, image, and likeness. So let's break it down. Obviously, the rule's been passed now, so you can get sponsorships and get paid, and some guys are really getting paid based on their name, image, and likeness. Obviously, you go play quarterback for Alabama, you go play quarterback for USC out in LA, you go play quarterback for those big schools. You'll probably make more money than a guy playing quarterback for South Carolina State, but nevertheless, everyone has a chance to make money, go get local sponsorships, et cetera, et cetera. And that all sounds great. And I'm not by no means saying that the fact that NIL is a thing is wrong. But what I'm saying is, we let the NCAA, whether it's and I don't even know who exactly the NCAA is. I don't know if it's a committee, if it's a organization or what, but we let the NCAA throw us a smokescreen and let us get excited when in reality they didn't solve what our initial gripe was. Remember, the whole reason why we thought players were getting paid was because the NCAA is making all this money off of these players. These players are the product, right? Yeah, there's ads and there's things like that, so on and so forth. But the players are the product. There's power. Someone once said there's power in the labor, I believe. And there's some truth to that. There's some fiction to that as well. But nevertheless, we were upset because the NCAA makes all this money off of these players and doesn't give any of it back. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now the NCAA makes all this money off these players, and guess what? They still don't give any of it back. They say, "Oh, you can go get paid from somebody else, right? That local sponsor over there at the local barbecue place can give you as much as they want, but we're still not going to pay you." Let me ask you this: anybody in the chat, anybody, Mike, and you too, what if you worked for me and I said, "Oh, you do this, and what you do directly affects how successful my business is." Okay. The first thing off the top of my head I can think about is a salesman, right? You're selling stuff, so therefore the more you sell, the more money I make, and we need salesmen in order for this business to grow, right?
Right.
And I'd say, okay, great. You being a salesman, what this does for you for my business is I'm not going to pay you, but the opportunities that you doing a good job will present in the future, a la NFL, are going to be what's going to make this worth it. Okay. And let's just say that was the way it worked. Okay. And then everybody was like, yo, dude, like, mind you, while I'm over here taking it all, you would say, oh, well, that's not fair. You're profiting off of me. And then when I move on, there's going to be more me's to come along and you're going to keep profiting, but there's no guarantee that I actually move on to the next level and make millions, et cetera, et cetera. So you say, I want to get paid for this. And I say, all right, fine. Since you want to get paid, we're based in Chicago. So that go around, people before, I wouldn't let anybody like tip you. If you're a salesman, I wouldn't let anybody tip you. So now you can take tips. Now, if someone says, hey, I want to sponsor you with a car. I want to put you on you're a prominent figure in Chicago. I want to put you on the face of our dealership for the next 3 years while you're here, blah, blah, blah. Go for it. Before I wouldn't let you do it. Now you can do it. But I still don't pay you. No money. I don't make any less money than I was making off of your back today that I did yesterday. The only difference is you're making money off of somebody else. And a lot of times a local business that probably doesn't need to be putting that much money into a college athlete. That's where we're at. The reality of it is the NCAA, they're still snakes, man. They're still snakes, and they wouldn't do anything that doesn't actually benefit them more than it benefits whoever. Now we got the media, we got everybody out here to shut up because these players get paid, and we still actually don't have to. We still don't actually have to pay them.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of the way the world works, though? I mean, if let's take my job for example, right? So I am a field supervisor for a construction company, right? And so we have 3 different levels of our operation. We've got the sales level, then we've got the office level, and then we've got the operations level, right? And it starts with the sales. Then, when they're going through everything and they're getting everything ready, that goes to the office to get all the permits and all that stuff. And then it comes to operations where we go out and we actually build the room. Now, the owner of the company isn't actually paying any of these people. The customer is essentially paying these people because that money that they get paid comes out of that contract that they just signed. Like that money that person that customer just put into the company goes towards paying the employees. And when you look at it from any major sports market or any major sports that we have out there, MLB, NFL, NHL, the way that their players get paid are through the NHL, through the owners, and through the endorsement deals. And the way the owners and everything gets paid is through the jersey sales, through the food and beverages that you buy at the stadium, through ticket sales, that type of stuff. So essentially the fans and the consumers are what pay the athletes. And the owners make way more than what the athletes do. It's kind of how it works. And the owners of any business always make more than what the athletes do, or what the workers do. Now, I get what you're saying to a point, because look, the NCAA is making out like a bandit, but it's no different than like right now in Major League Baseball, we've got the lockout. And I'm looking at this, and I've said this all along. The owners make way too much money. When you got a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, who grossed $1 billion in revenue last year, and they have revenue sharing, yet they only have a $40 million payroll. $1 billion, and they only $40 million of that is going back into the payroll. It's gross. I keep saying in baseball they need to have a floor before they have a cap. They need to, have a minimum that you have to spend on your talent and put a product out on the field. But we're talking about college football here, and it's kind of the same thing. I mean, look, the NCAA isn't going to relinquish any of its money. I mean, rich people don't get rich by saying, "Hey, look here, let me give you some of my money." They get rich because they keep it all. That's just what they do. And so I think, for us to think that the NCAA was actually going to pay the players, I think would have been a little foolish. I think my entire fight was the fact that they would penalize these kids for taking even a lunch from a coach, or they would penalize the kids for, that are coming from nothing. Like I can't remember who it was. Was it Le'Veon Bell maybe? Or no, it was the kid from Reggie Bush, who took a car and a house for his mom, and they tell you, "Oh, we're going to strip you of the Heisman Trophy." What? Like, stop! If somebody wants to give the man a car and give his mom a house, he earned that. His play earned that. So I don't. I think it's a little bit out there, for us to have wanted the NCAA to pay these players. But I think it's kind of like any sort of, I guess, strike, right? Like baseball right now, they have a strike. The players aren't going to get everything that they want, and the owners aren't going to get anything that they want. They've got to make concessions and meet in the middle. And I think that's kind of where the NCAA and college players were at, was they met in the middle. NCAA was like, you know what? You're right. We shouldn't penalize you for taking all this stuff. Here, go make as much money as you want. Just don't take ours.
So, all right. So I will say this. No, that's not. Yes, how you described is the way the world works. But at the end of the day, a consumer is paying a company whose company, you said the NHL or whatever, what they're paying their players is a part of the overall revenue. They need the ticket sales. They need the this sales, the concession sales, all of that to pay these players, because there would be no concession sales without these players, right? There would be no reason to come to a game if there was no players. So they pay them. What I'm saying is what the NCAA is basically saying is, hey, guess what? The fans, they got to pay concessions and they got to pay tickets and they got to pay season, all that stuff. But also the fans decide to pay you, not me. That's what I'm saying. So it's almost like, hey, Charlie's Chicago, I don't know what Phillips Philly cheesesteaks in Philadelphia has to already, people pay to get into games and see people play. They also then, if they want you to get paid, they got to pay you themselves. And that's where it's kind of different. The other thing with the professionals and the endorsements, of course, they sign contracts, and it's a little bit different with like the way their stuff works. If we're going to say, hey, we can at least be proud of the NCAA for the fact that they don't punish kids for trying to make a dollar.
Right.
We can say we can be proud of them for that, but that's not what the joy was. Yeah. The joy was not, oh, well, heck yeah, hoorah, they're not punishing these kids anymore. That wasn't the joy. The joy was all these kids can finally get paid. Right. And the last thing is, when you have a strike and a lockout, and you're talking about professional athletes, you're talking about Major League Baseball, NBA had a lockout, NFL, like they all had to go through CBAs and all that stuff. It's bound to happen from time to time. They make concessions because, like, owners and stuff, we're dealing with grown men, right? There's the problem with the NCAA is there is no representation for students. Who actually represents the students? Do they represent themselves? Is there a legal, like there is no NCAA PA. So therefore, the reality of it is the NCAA doesn't make any concessions they don't have to make, like that they wouldn't want to make, because they're not fighting anybody. They have 100% autonomy, and all the rules are made by them. So in reality, there's no like, oh, well, we'll give you guys a little and give you, because the reality is we need to get this media noise that's been sparking for 8, 9, 10 years. We need to get this off our back. Let's just go ahead and say, oh, they can get paid. But in reality, I in no way do I think, hey, we want to do this for you, so we won't punish you anymore. I truly believe this is a look, we're not trying to pay you because we don't really think that we think that what we do is more important than what you do. And so therefore, we're not going to pay you. Right. They can pay you. The people who pay to come to the games, the people who pay to eat the Phillips Phillies can also then pay Phillips Phillies so that they have enough money to then sponsor you.
Right.
On the back end.
And then Drew wants to know, does the NCAA charge the business that wants to use the NIL with a player?
That I don't know. I don't think so. I think that what that player does is his own, it's like it's a private, like I don't think they're allowed to touch that in any way, shape, or form. Now, remember the first draft of the NIL was all the money's going in a pool, and then it's getting split evenly amongst all college athletes, meaning that the quarterback from Alabama and the quarterbacks from Alabama, USC, UCLA, LSU, Georgia, the top 10 quarterbacks that are going to bring in 35% of this NIL revenue it's all going to be split amongst, and we're not talking about just football players. We're talking about football players, basketball players, baseball players, soccer players, field hockey players. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're talking everything. That was the initial draft. And it was kind of like, all right. Then the next thing was, hey, players can't use it while they're in college. It has to go into a fund that they can't use till after they leave college, which is like they've tried everything they could not to let these guys ride around campus in a Benz.
Right.
For what?
And, one of the things that I've known since, meeting Buck, a little over a year and a half ago now, is he played for K-State. He was a linebacker for Kansas State. And I didn't know that the colleges actually do give the college athletes a stipend after every game. It's not like a crazy amount, but some colleges do. They'll give a stipend of like $1,500 or $2,000 a month to a college athlete. It probably depends on your status, with the team and whether or not you're a starter and all that other good stuff. But I didn't even know all that, ahead of this argument that I had brought up a while back before they even started paying the players. Now, I just don't know. The NCAA as an entity has to me always been an unnecessary entity in college football. Why they don't need the NCAA? What is the NCAA there for? They don't the colleges could run this stuff without them. And I don't know how the NCAA has been able to convince people that they are a good, source of what they need in their sports. Because, look, to me, the only thing the NCAA has done with college football is hold it back. I mean, hold it back when you could have there's no reason why you can't have a 12-team playoff. There's no reason why you can't do the thing. And to say, oh, well, the kids, they've got to go to class and they've got tests to take. Stop it. There's no reason why you're telling me. So from, the NCAA basketball tournament, you're telling me those kids are in class for that month that tournament's going on? No, they're not. You know what I mean? You can't tell me that an extra 3 weeks of the college football season is going to stop these kids, make or break their academic in college, when we know, probably 35% of them aren't worried about their academics anyway because they're playing sports professionally when they get out of college. So I don't subscribe to that notion. I think the NCAA has been a sham all along.
I don't want to undermine the NCAA's role in everything. Way back when I used to do, when I worked for the YMCA, I used to organize summer camp tournaments and leagues. So you had at our branch, you had 8, 9, 10 different camps going on. This was a sports camp. This was this camp. This was that camp, whatever. And what I would do was I would come in and I'd say, okay, now we're going to organize a little league. We're going to play some games. We're going to have a tournament, blah, blah, blah. And I would do that by myself. Yeah, because that's 10 camps. 10 camps with maybe 10 players and 2 coaches each, right?
Right.
You're talking about 300-plus schools. And the problem is the reason why the NCAA or some sort of committee, unit, entity, whatever, is important is because every school has its own interests at heart. And there's no way for North Carolina to say, all right, Alabama, we're going to do this. We're going to be in the same league. We're going to go by my rules. And Alabama's going to say, well, no. We're going to go by our rules, right? The NCAA allows, and I don't know this 100%, but if it was built the way I would anticipate it being built, which honestly it probably wasn't, you'll say, hey, these are the rules set in place. These rules are not meant to gear towards one school or another. Whichever schools can abide, can operate in these rules, the best is going to have the most success. But if we put it up to the schools, I don't think they'll ever agree because no 2 schools has the same agenda. No 2 schools. And
but what you could do is like any other sport, you can get the athletic directors together. You could have a commissioner and you could get together and you could say, hey, these are the rules. The commissioner is there to enforce the rules. There's ways around the NCAA. I get what you, I mean, yeah, look, without rules, there's just chaos, right? There's anarchy. And so there has to be some sort of rules and there has to be a way to follow them. I just think the NCAA has found a way to sort of kind of run a Ponzi scheme almost on these players for so damn long because they're making all this money and for what? For what? I mean,
who cashes the checks? When they get paid from ESPN, when they get paid, who is the one holding this? All right,
yeah,
this is going to this account. Who is running this? That's who I want to know.
Who's the man behind the curtain?
Because whoever it is has done a hell of a job keeping themselves out the spotlight. Nobody has any idea who that is. You might know who the commissioner is, but the commissioner just gets paid by the NCAA. Who is the one paying them? Because they got everything. Everything. They have done it. And that's where it's yo, dude, like he's the one that's like, yeah, I'm not paying these players. I already got to give out this to the schools. And if you make the college football playoff, your whole conference gets like a whatever the check is and blah, blah, blah. I already got to pay out all these schools. I ain't paying out these kids too many players.
You know what? I almost think that sometimes, especially with the SEC bias that there is, I almost seem like there is a kind of, how there's boosters for schools, right? So boosters will give schools money so that schools can give out scholarships and all this stuff. I almost feel like the schools are sort of the boosters for the NCAA, right? Like Alabama's like, hey, look, here's $50 million. Make sure we make the college football playoff every year. Oh, we lost an unranked team this year. All right, we'll only drop it from 1 to 5. So that's wait. We might have to have Georgia play Alabama again in the semifinals. No. Let's switch this up. Alabama's going to jump Michigan, and Georgia's not going to fall below Cincinnati. And what we'll do here is we'll just make them play against each other because they'll probably win both of those games and they'll play it. I was rooting so bad for Cincinnati and Michigan to both win their games, to have Cincinnati, Michigan in the championship game, just so that the NCAA, like I guarantee you, if that had happened, both teams would have come down with a rapid case of COVID, and both teams would have had to forfeit, so they would have just played Alabama and Georgia anyway.
Yeah, you're a little bit more of a skeptic than I am when it comes to that stuff. I do want to get to Drew asked another good question regarding the business references.
Yeah, I see that. But if the business reference the teams in their ad, does the NCAA have the right to charge them because they don't have permission to use the team in their ads? I saw that earlier too, and that's a really good question because I would assume that they do.
So the thing people have to remember is, even though the NCAA is an entity in which all the schools kind of fall under, each school itself is a private entity as well.
Right.
A school is a business, just like an NFL team is a business, and it is a business. So therefore, for instance, if I work for Combs Construction, or let's put it this way, if I work for Combs Drywall, and Combs Drywall is basically, think of the schools as vendors for NCAA, right? So
right.
Overall, there's a huge construction company that uses each individual vendor to get this whole thing built, to get this house built, right? Well, if I work for one particular, if I'm a vendor and I say, hey, well, this guy who works for me, I'm going to, promote him. I don't have to then go pay the overall big construction company. I don't have to pay them for that. I'm only just paying. So like, Alabama doesn't have to. Nobody, the schools don't have to. I'm sorry, Phillips Philly cheesesteaks doesn't have to pay Alabama and pay the NCAA to use Alabama's quarterback. I think they just pay the quarterback. Now they may have to get a charge from Alabama because hey, like in order for Bryce Young to be on your thing, you're obviously going to have to promote that he's an Alabama quarterback. So maybe they have to pay Alabama, but I don't think they have to pay the NCAA. And again, I don't know, but from my 2 semesters, 1 year of business in college, this is all I can give you.
And that's that it's a good question because maybe because you see ads out there all the time. Hell, I see a billboard all the time driving to work where it's Chris Bryant and he's doing an ad. And he's got, what most people know is he was playing for the Cubs. He's got a pinstripe jersey on, but the Cubs logo isn't on it. And he's just got a plain blue hat. So maybe they didn't have to pay the Cubs because they didn't use their logo, but they used their player, and everybody in Chicago knows who the hell he plays for. So
Same thing with like the NCAA football game. They use all the teams' logos. They use their colors. They use their this, that, and the third. I don't know if they had to pay the schools or pay the NCAA. I think they had to pay both because there was like NCAA symbolism in it, like, NCAA football, like, that kind of thing. But had it just been, like for who was it? Greasy. Who was it that made his own football? I mean, it wasn't good as far as a game, but it definitely was like college football. Oh God, can I remember it for the life of me?
His own video game?
Yes.
Yeah, that was Greasy.
It was Greasy. Yeah, like he didn't have to pay the NCAA because he didn't call it NCAA football.
Yeah.
He only had like 10 schools. So in that case, we pay the schools. We don't pay the NCAA.
And it was
It
terrible.
could very well be a loophole that they're either setting up or that might already be set up again. We might be completely missing something that someone from legal might be able to look at us and be like, nope, actually, but
that's why I'll never forget. I played an old Nintendo game back in the 90s. It was called Bases Loaded. And each team was the team that you would expect them to be, except one letter was changed out in their names. And every player, their first initial in their first name was their first initial in their last name. So they just switched them around. So like Andre Dawson was Dodre Nawson. And it was like, you're like, what did they just did this so they could get around paying people for
Yeah,
it was
that's just to show you they'll do, and that's not just the NCAA. People do whatever they can to save $1. Businesses will do whatever they can to save $1, and they will do what they can not to pay people for their likeness. And this is a prime example. This is what they did. They said, "Well, we ain't gonna pay them, but to get y'all to shut up, they can pay them." And everybody fell for it, and it's just unfortunate to see. I mean, but what are you gonna do? I mean, I hope I don't get like hunt down by whoever for shedding light on this. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that it's unfortunate. I mean, it's fortunate. Is it progress? Is a step in the right direction? Maybe, but it is still something as opposed to what it was before, which was nothing.
Did you have another subject you wanted to touch on?
I mean, Joe Burrow's that dude.
Joe, yeah, he is.
Joe Burrow is that dude, and he's I picked him up. I'm in a dynasty fantasy football league, and I picked him up, and I think it's funny. Have you seen the two pictures that he took in the locker room? The first picture is him and two black Bengals players, and the next one is him and two white Bengals players, and how his like pose and demeanor and everything is completely different.
No,
if you haven't seen it, definitely go look at it on Twitter. It's just funny. It's not something that I'm like thinking too deep into. It's just hilarious. So definitely guys check that out. But yeah, man, that was it. I think what we should do is we should really try to see if we can find someone who knows a lot about the legalities of this NCAA stuff to like talk with us about this, because as we talked about it, I got more interesting, and as Drew asked great questions, I got more interested in the answers to those questions. And so I think that like that is a challenge that we should take on, especially if we're gonna do the draft, unless you're not going, because you know how that is.
Yeah, no, I'm going. I don't care what the wife says. I'll sleep on the couch for a month if I have to. I'm going to Vegas.
I hear that. So yeah, so that's all I really had. I don't know when your next break is scheduled, but
we got a minute here. I just want to go through the comments real quick. We had one Pride 40 wanted to know if we thought that Chubb was going to have a good night on the ground tonight. I always think Nick Chubb's going to have a good night on the ground, and especially against the Steelers defense that struggles against the run. So I think you'll be all right with your fantasy matchup. I assume I hope you're in the finals. I really hope you don't have a championship on the final week. I always hate those, man. I'd leave that fantasy league quick. My finals happened last week. So, but yeah, no, I think you'll be good with Chubb. He's always solid.
Here's a quick little update. Nick Chubb, 3 carries, 34 yards. He busted out a 32-yarder. Baker Mayfield, 1 for 7, 20 yards. So yeah, it's going to be a Chubb night. Yeah. And if you need him to get 20 points, if he can get a touchdown on the board, I think he'll get it.
Yeah, I'm watching it in the background here. They're punt after punt. They're through the first quarter, 0-0. But I got a lot of things going on here, Kev. We got I'm going to do some Bears talk here in a little bit. I'm going to talk some baseball tonight. But thanks for joining me. Thanks for hanging out and shooting the shit with me, so to speak. And let everybody know again where they can find you.
The Bottom Line Podcast. If you want to follow me, we can talk about all this stuff. I'm out there on the tweets on the Bluebirds, at the real Kev _0, Instagram at the real _Kev0. The Bottom Line Podcast. We don't do as much action on the Twitter account of it, but it's at the bottom _pod, POD. And then, of course, like I said, you find the podcast wherever you get your podcast, guys. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, just all of it. It's everywhere. You can't miss it. Belly Up Sports Network for now. Capital Broadcast Network, probably a little bit later on. And, we're talking real stuff. We're talking stuff like this, getting guests on to explain stuff like what we talked about today, even CTE stuff, name, image, and likeness stuff. This is the kind of stuff that we talk about. So if you enjoyed this, definitely go give it a listen.
Well, I enjoyed it, Kev. It was always good to have you on. We always have good conversation when you're on, man. I appreciate it. We're going to see you next week.
Absolutely. See you next week.
All right, man. Have a good one. All right, guys. So we are going to get to another break. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about my Chicago Bears. Are they going to fire Nagy and Pace? They better fire Nagy and Pace. Stay with me. We'll be back 2 minutes. What is going on? I am back. It's your boy BC, Beastie Brandon Combs, coming to you live on the Man Hour here on YouTube. For all those that are watching this on Tuesday morning on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network on Roku TV, you guys can also find us live every Sunday through Thursday, 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are live. You guys could interact. That's how you get your names up here on the screen, like you'll see. As One Pride 40 says, all his players got hurt, especially at wide receiver in his fantasy football league. Well, One Pride, I too am in a dynasty league. My running backs are CMC, King Henry. Yeah, so I had a rough season there in my dynasty league. I also have DeAndre Hopkins as a wide receiver. Hurt all year. Had a couple really good weeks at the beginning of the year that helped me out, helped me at least get on the playoffs. But it was a rough one. It was a rough go. I had, I have Cooper Kupp, I have Matt Stafford. So there, I got away with a little bit. I had Tom Brady, Gronkowski. So those are some of the guys on my team. I don't know all of them right now, but that's what I had. Dealt with a lot of injuries and then a lot of COVID at the end of the year, which really killed my my fantasy season. So, but at any rate, I see that One Pride 40 also said keep Nagy. Listen, One Pride 40, I know you're a Detroit Lions fan, and you just want to see Bears fans suffer, which I don't know why, because I don't want to see Detroit Lions fans suffer. I think you guys deserve a winning product. I think it's horrible what you guys have been through. But are the Bears going to fire Nagy and Pace? And I would say yes. I would say they absolutely are going to fire Nagy and Pace. One of the reasons why I think they're going to be firing both of them is they're not really evaluating young talent. You watched the game this past week. You had Tevin Jenkins, who only played 7 snaps, not evaluating him. You got Justin Fields, and instead of playing Justin Fields and letting him play like you would let any other player play hurt, you're playing Andy Dalton, and you're trying to decide between him and Nick Foles. Like, why? First of all, why is Nick Foles even on the damn team? That's one reason why you should fire Ryan Pace. Second of all, you're playing against a guy who is named, God, I'm going to forget his name now. The quarterback from whatever the hell his name is, Long Neck is what I call him. And the guy throws for negative 10 yards. He had negative 10 yards passing yesterday. And that's the guy that you paid $18 million to a couple seasons ago. Another reason why I think they're going to fire both of them is because all year long, Bears ownership has said that they're a collaboration. They're a collaboration. Nagy and Pace are a collaboration. They've been together. They go together. So if you're going to fire one, you're going to fire both, in my opinion. You can't just say, "Oh, they're a collaboration," and then be like, "Nah, never mind. No, they're not. No, they're not. We're gonna keep one, but fire the other." And that's another reason to fire Ryan Pace, right? He's missed on 2 coaches. He's brought in 2 of his guys, 2 of his coaches, and whiffed on both of them. And if you don't think he whiffed on Nagy, you're watching something different than what I'm watching. If you think Nagy was anything more than the wrong choice, anything more than a guy who rested on the laurels of the fact that he had 1 year with a quarterback who was a rookie, who nobody saw coming, that was probably going to end up being a Hall of Famer right off the bat. And Matt Nagy came to Chicago and he robbed Chicago blind. He took their money, did no good, and ran away with it. That's what Matt Nagy did. He's a quarterback whisperer. That's what they said. He's going to come in. He's going to be able to develop a quarterback. Well, he proved you wrong with Mitch Trubisky. He proved you wrong so far this year with Justin Fields. His inability, complete inability to be able to develop a young quarterback has been astounding. I mean, just astounding. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Mitch Trubisky was just not that guy, and Ryan Pace got fleeced on Mitch Trubisky, and that's another reason to fire Ryan Pace, right? You completely missed on that quarterback pick, and you gave up a lot to go and get him. For what reason, I don't know, because you only had to move up 1 spot. He certainly would have been available at 3. You idiot. But you missed on him. And Matt Nagy, even though you missed on him, Matt Nagy should have been able to do more with him than what he did. But Matt Nagy doesn't have the ability to adjust to his quarterback. He doesn't have the ability to say, you know what, this is my playbook, but these are my quarterback strengths. He doesn't go to his quarterback strengths. He wants his quarterback to adjust to his playbook. And that's not how you do things in the NFL. That's not how things are done at all. Not really at any level, to be honest with you. How do you develop a player and expect him to work to your strengths and you not work to his? It's terrible. It's terrible. And, you know, another reason that why you're looking at firing Matt Nagy is none of his players are held accountable for what they do. There's no accountability in this organization. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And there's talk about them bringing in a players, players community, right? So they're going to have former players come in and, like Olin Kreutz and, Brian Urlacher and all these guys, that Lance Briggs, and they're going to have say in the organization and how it's run. Well, all of these guys have spent time criticizing what Ryan Pace does. So the talk about Ryan Pace maybe staying on and becoming president of football operations, there's no way you're going to bring in Olin Kreutz and Lance Briggs and Brian Urlacher, who've been criticizing the hell out of Ryan Pace for his decisions, and say, hey, guys, guess what? Come on, you're coming into the organization. You're going to have a say. By the way, Ryan Pace is your boss. It doesn't make any sense in the world. You're not going to do that. How are you going to sell that to the fan base, keeping Ryan Pace or Matt Nagy? You can't sell that to the fan base. Who's going to buy that? Other than fans of other teams, like One Pride 40 here. Who's going to buy the fact that you're trying to keep Pace or Nagy or both? You're not going to buy it. Nobody is going to buy that. Nobody is going to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Ryan Pace, he missed on Mitch Trubisky. He missed on two coaches. Another thing that he does, he's drafted okay for the most part, other than at the quarterback position. Roquan Smith was a great choice. Roquan Smith has 157 tackles this season. Brian Urlacher at his peak, his best season, had 152. And there's still a game to go. So Roquan Smith is having a great season. Ryan Pace has actually drafted somewhat well. But to whiff on the coaches, to whiff on the quarterback position, to not hold any accountability and do the things needed done to make this a winning organization, that's unforgivable. And it's unforgivable to the fan base. And there's no way you can sell that to the fan base of saying, hey, yes, you know what? Ryan Pace no longer be the GM, but he's going to be the president of football operations. For what? So he can go hire his buddy to be the GM, and Ryan Pace can still call the shots and still do what he wants. Nobody's going to buy it. So if you're the Bears and you're going to say, hey, we're going to keep Ryan Pace, the only way you can justify that is say, look, we know he's whiffed, but we think that this is the right choice. It's not going to be the most popular choice, but we think this is the right choice. And not try to sell it at all. Just say, hey, look, this is what we're doing and deal with it. Don't like it? Go root for the Lions. Like, I don't know how else to put it. That's what the Bears organization is at. And the problem with it for me, when I hear Drew say stuff like he's going to keep Ryan Pace, the McCaskies are going to keep Ryan Pace. They love Ryan Pace. The reason why I hate that idea so much is because it's plausible. That's something the Bears actually would do. And it scares the crap out because it's something that they would do. And they're just so poorly run from the top down. And it sucks because this is a charter organization of the NFL. This is supposed to be an organization that is run with class. It's supposed to be an organization that is competitive. This is supposed to be an organization that is at the top all the time. Now, I'm not talking about winning Super Bowls. I'm not talking about, because, look, not everybody's going to be able to do what the Patriots have done over the last 20 years, right? Not every organization is going to be able to sustain that amount of success. It's been unbelievable what the Patriots have done over the last 20 plus years. And now what they're doing again this year. They're going to make the playoffs again this year. But what the Bears have to do, they have to at least be competitive in their own division. And they haven't been that. Yes, they won 12 games a couple years ago with Matt Nagy and with Mitch Trubisky on the heels of an amazing defense. That defense carried that team to those 12 wins that year. It had nothing to do with the offense. The offense was so inept, and it showed in that playoff game against Philadelphia where they needed a last-second field goal that banged off both uprights. That was terrible. One Pride 40 says that would not make your Bears attractive to head coaches. Look, I think the Bears are the second worst head coaching opportunity out there right now. And it's because of ownership. It's because of the lack of support you get from ownership. The fact that they show that they don't make the right decisions at the right time. If I'm a head coach and I'm looking at other organizations other than the Jacksonville Jaguars, because to hell with going there, they're probably the worst place to go. But I mean, hell, if I'm looking at a place like Carolina, if I'm looking at a place like a lot of people now are talking about maybe John Harbaugh being out in Baltimore. If I'm looking at a place like, does Mike Tomlin decide to stay in Pittsburgh or does he leave? Some other, like anywhere else really other than Jacksonville, I'm going before I go to the Bears. And they need to get somebody in. They need to bring in a general manager who knows how to hire, who knows how to build an organization. Like I talk about it all the time when we watch them on Monday Night Football. But we've got to go out and get a guy who knows what the hell they're talking about. A guy who can go out and get an offensive quarterback to come in and show Justin Fields the ropes. And Alpha Rob says the Bears have to get the quarterback situation right. I don't know how it's going to take Fields time to develop. Look, Fields is an extremely smart quarterback. Fields learns on the fly faster than a lot of quarterbacks I've seen. And I've seen a lot of poor quarterback play. I'm a Bears fan. Our best quarterback of all time is Jay Cutler. So I've seen a lot of bad quarterback play as a Bears fan. But you can develop Justin Fields really easily as long as you're willing to adjust to Justin Fields' strengths. Bring in a guy like Eric Bieniemy from Kansas City who knows how to adjust, who knows how to make adjustments, who knows how to, when the chips are down like he's shown this year in Kansas City. Look, they didn't look so great in the first 6 weeks of the season, right? But now they look like they might be the best team in the AFC. Bring in a guy who just knows how to develop a quarterback, knows how to play to his strengths. Justin Fields is a stud. Justin Fields is a bona fide stud. Buck, I see you out there, man. Look, you're not even on the show tonight, and you're pissing me off. Andy Dalton is not a top 15 quarterback. He's just not. You can say it till you're blue in the face, just like you said that the Lions were going to win 11 games this season. You're out of your mind. Andy Dalton is not a top 15 quarterback. Look, the Bears need to part ways with Ryan Pace. They need to part ways with Matt Nagy for all of the reasons that I just talked about. It scares me when they go out and they win a game 29-3 against the terrible New York Giants. It scares me that ownership's going to look at this and be like, well, they're moving in the right direction. Maybe we should give them another shot. because that's what the Bears would freaking do. And it drives me absolutely bonkers as a Bears fan to watch something like this in this franchise, in this city, to show what they can do, to have to sit there and sit through this. The McCaskies, look, they're not going to sell. Should they sell? Sure. Yeah. Everybody in Chicago would love to see them sell. But they're not going to. They're not going anywhere. All we can do as Bears fans is hope and pray that they find the right GM. And that they give the right GM the space to go and do what he needs to do to make this a winning organization again. Finally get tired of losing. Look, being a Chicago guy, I sat through how many years of the Chicago Blackhawks under Bill Wirtz? Just horrendous. Horrendous owner. Wouldn't televise home games because he felt like if you wanted to see your team, you had to go to the stadium and pay him to see your team. Wouldn't televise home games. Wouldn't pay for high-priced players. Wouldn't bring in, high-priced talent. Wouldn't do any of that stuff. And the Blackhawks didn't win under him. And then he passed away. And as much as I hate to say it, and as much as I don't want the bad karma, him dying was the best thing that ever happened to the Blackhawks because then Rocky Wirtz took over. And Rocky Wirtz went out and got Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane, and the rest is history. Won 3 Stanley Cups in the last, 11 years. And had a dynasty. Well, when they were struggling to score goals, went out and got Marian Hossa. Sometimes ownership, you're not going to win under ownership because they won't allow you to. I just hope that at some point the McCaskies get tired of losing, get tired of hearing people like me and other people in the media talking about how much they suck and how bad it is to be a Bears fan. It's terrible. It really is, because this organization should be so much better than what it is. And the owners of the organization are what's holding it down. One Pride 40 says, you guys sound like Lions fans. He also says, Buck is a jinx. Buck says they will win at least 8 next year. Oh, God. Alpha Rob says, I know what you mean, Combs, about knowing and watching bad quarterbacks. As a Bills fan, you're right. You have to start with a GM that knows what they're doing. Alpha Rob, you had Jim Kelly. Yeah, Jim Kelly. He took you to 4 Super Bowls. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. Who do the Bears have? At least you had Jim Kelly. I mean, what do the Bears get to say? Our greatest quarterback was Jay Cutler. Smoking Jay. It's terrible. It's unbelievable how bad it's been. But we're going to get to another break. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit of baseball with you guys. Let's talk about this lockout. Kind of educate you guys as to what the lockout is about. Let you know how long it's going to last. Let you know what to expect. We're also going to do Combs' eye test. We'll get to comments too. Anything you guys want to talk about, feel free to hit me up in the chat. We'll talk about anything you guys want to talk about. We'll be back. Give me 2 minutes. are back. Guys, we talk a lot of football on the show. It's kind of our bread and butter. I'm a baseball guy. I love the game of baseball. One of the things that's really been kind of bugging me has been the lockout, right? Because I haven't been able to watch MLB Network, watch the hot stove. There were no winter meetings, no crazy signings, trying to figure out who's going where. And I started talking about it, and people were like, well, what exactly is the lockout all about? And so, just so you guys know, the biggest part of the lockout right now is economics, right? Players feel with emergence of analytics within front offices that fewer and fewer second and third tier players are getting paid when they finally become free agents, because they have to wait 6 years to become a free agent. By that time, most of these guys who are getting in the league when they're 24 are already 30. And because of the analytics, they're not getting paid like they would have in their prime. So players want to be paid earlier, to have a new collective bargaining system or some sort of higher paid contracts for rookies. I'm kind of with that. Look, a lot of people talk about, they get paid too much, or they're this or they're that. I think that MLB needs to have a salary floor. I think MLB needs to force teams to be competitive. Force a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, who only have a $40 million payroll but grossed over $1 billion last year, to spend some of their money and put a product on the field that's worth watching. And a lot of that goes into this. Now, some of the things that the MLB is looking for is stuff like expanded postseason. They want to have 14 teams make the playoffs with creative attempt to incentivize the winning. So that would incentivize the Pittsburgh Pirates to maybe spend more money. The best team in each league would receive a bye, while other division winners would get to choose their wild card opponent. It's a pretty dramatic change for MLB. So it's one of the things that the players don't really want for some reason. I don't know why they wouldn't want it. It means more baseball. It means more money in your pocket. I don't really understand why a player wouldn't want it. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. The owners don't want to pay more money when the players are younger. They want to have more control over the players. The players, they don't, they want the incentive to get paid when you're younger, when you're in your prime. So the biggest question is, who's going to win it? And I don't think that's going to be a win-win for the players or for the owners. I think that what's going to end up happening is the players are going to end up with something to be happy about, and the owners are going to end up with something to be happy about. It could be in the form of an overhauled arbitration system, could have the designated hitter in the National League, a higher luxury tax threshold, or a quicker route to free agency. It'll be a couple of those things, but it's not going to be all of them. It's not going to be all of them. The owners are going to get a win somewhere along the line. And that's where it's at. Now, a lot of people are like, well, spring training's coming up, MLB season's coming up. When is this whole thing going to end? It's hard to tell. I mean, look, the possibility of losing games is always out there. I don't want to say that it's guaranteed that this thing's going to end before the season starts. I think a key date is probably January 31st. You're probably looking at a realistic time frame for players to still be able to get to spring training and still prepare for the regular season to start on time. If it gets much past that, we could be talking about losing games. And that's not good for the game. It's not good for baseball. So those are just some of the things for those of you who are kind of passerbys in baseball. Maybe you like the game, but you don't love the game, or you don't watch as often. That's what's going on right now with baseball and with its lockout. And hopefully at some point here, we get a little bit closer to an end. So let's get to some comments here. Alpha Rob says, I kind of agree with that. You have a short period of time. You have to make the most money you can. I agree. Look, you're 24 years old and you come up in the major leagues. And I use Chris Bryant as an example. Chris Bryant was 24 and they held him back from starting spring training, which he was murdering the ball in spring training. I mean, the guy was hitting, I think he was hitting like over 500 in spring training. And they held them back and they said, no, you're going down to the minors, because if they didn't bring him up, if they waited till May 15th, they get an extra year of control. So they held him back. And then he makes $645,000 that year. He's the rookie of the year. Hits 30 plus home runs. The next year, he makes $785,000. And he wins the MVP, and the Cubs win the World Series, breaking a 108-year drought. Then he goes to arbitration that year and makes a record $1.5 million in arbitration. For a guy who just won the MVP and helped you end a 108-year drought, he had to settle for $1.5 million. It's crazy to me. And now he's dealing with all sorts of injuries. I've come out and I've said, look, the guy, he's got injuries. I'm not paying him what I would pay a guy like we're looking over there, Nolan Arenado. I'm not going to pay him the same that I would that guy. So they should get that concession. They should be able to make more money early. One Pride 40 says football is greater than baseball. I disagree. Highly disagree. I know that's what you guys come here for, though. So we'll back off some of the baseball talk. We'll get back into the football talk here. As One Pride 40 says, Baker is going to screw me over in fantasy football. Yes, he is. That's what Baker Mayfield does best. Wants to know who's better, Goff or Mayfield. Ooh. I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield on this one. I think that Jared Goff is just... I think his ceiling is lower than Baker Mayfield's. I think with Baker Mayfield, you at least have a chance to win football games. And I don't get the same feeling with Jared Goff. I just don't. I think that Jared Goff is a quarterback that, look, when your Lions made that trade, One Pride, Matt Stafford for Jared Goff, I laughed because you gave up a guy who was a great quarterback. I think Matt Stafford's a great quarterback, and I think he's shown it in LA. The problem with Baker Mayfield is that I think he tries to do too much when the game's on the line. He tries to force the ball into some tight spots. He tries to do too much to help his team win. There's a lot of pressure on him there in Cleveland, right? Because this is a Cleveland Browns fan base that is just starving for a winning team. And every year, people are picking them to win the Super Bowl. I don't know why nobody's learned yet. But every year, they pick somebody up in free agency. They're like, that's going to be what puts them over the edge. And every year, they're the same 7-9, 7-10, 8-10, 8-9, whatever you want to, however many games they're playing now. They're the same team every year. When you look at a guy like Joe Burrows and what he's doing Joe Burrow, I always put an S on the end of his name. You look at a guy like Joe Burrow and what he's doing in Cincinnati. That's what Cleveland fans expected out of Baker Mayfield. And Cincinnati's going to be good for a long time. Cincinnati is going to be good for a very long time. And what Joe Burrow is doing there is what they thought Baker Mayfield should be doing in Cleveland. And they're right. He should be doing that in Cleveland. He's got enough weapons. He should be doing that in Cleveland. But if you're asking me if you put Jared Goff on the Lions, which he is on the Lions, or you put Baker Mayfield on this year's Lions, I think that the Lions with Baker Mayfield are actually probably a 7 or 8 win team. So that's where I'm at with Baker Mayfield. I think he's a very good quarterback. He's just not a great quarterback. Alpha Rob says, baseball has to make certain teams spend money. I agree. Drew says, Baker Mayfield panics and forces it. He does that a lot. Absolutely 110%. 2 firsts and a third. Yeah. And Jared Goff. I mean, the Rams have a chance to win the Super Bowl this year with the quarterback that you traded. They didn't have that same opportunity with Jared Goff. I know they went to a Super Bowl a couple years ago with him, but they weren't going to win that Super Bowl. Jared Goff isn't that guy. It looks like there won't be a lot of head coaching vacancies like there was last year. I think there's going to be a few more than you would think. Would you be surprised, 1/40, if John Harbaugh gets let go? After some of the decisions that he's made over there in Baltimore over the last couple of weeks? Going for 2-point conversions instead of trying to take it to overtime? Being a guy who, while yes, it does take a lot of guts to make that call to go for 2 instead of forcing overtime, when you lose, it looks like a horrible call. Now, granted, if you win, we're probably praising you for it. Wow, that's a really gutsy call and it pays off. Not all of us would. I would probably be more realistic. Like, man, I still don't know how he makes that call. But it didn't pay off, though. And that's what costs you a head coaching job. The fact that you lost the division after starting out 8-3, and you lost the division to the Cincinnati Bengals, that's going to be a hard pill to swallow. And that's going to be hard for John Harbaugh to overcome. So I would not be surprised if the Baltimore Ravens job opens up. Another job I wouldn't be surprised to see open up would be Seattle. I think the Seahawks might be searching for a new head coach. You got the Bears, you got Seattle, you got Baltimore. Let's see, who else could be on the hot seat? How about Denver? Denver's another one that could possibly open up. You know, they went out and got Teddy Bridgewater, supposedly got their guy. And they haven't been great. They've been underachieving this year. There's a lot of high hopes for them in Denver. They haven't panned out. What about Cleveland? Could Cleveland's job be opening up? So I think there might be a few more jobs opening up than what you think. I really do. Alpha Rob says Denver. I agree. I just messed. I think Vic Fangio could be on his way out in Denver. Depending on what goes on in Tampa Bay, I know he's only 1 year removed from a Super Bowl, but if they lose in the first or second round, with all the stuff that's gone on in the locker room with the Antonio Brown debacle, could Bruce Arians be on his way out? It's not out of the realm of possibility. Tom Brady doesn't seem to get along with him. What about the Pittsburgh Steelers? What if Mike, not that they're going to fire him, because I don't think they'd ever fire Mike Tomlin. But what if Mike Tomlin decides he doesn't want to come back? What if Mike Tomlin wants to pursue other opportunities? You know, if they find a way to end up losing this game, they'll secure their first losing season. Oh, no, I guess next week they could go 8-1 and technically not have a losing season. But if they find a way to lose this game, up 10-0 to the Browns heading into halftime here, that he could be a guy who's just like, you know what, I want to see what I can do. He's a guy I'd welcome in Chicago. I'd love to see a guy like Mike Tomlin. One prize says Joe Judge is safe. I mean, he went out on a limb last night in the press conference for the organization. That might have saved his job there. I don't know that Joe Judge is the answer, but you know what else you can do? You're gonna. You see, there might not be a whole lot of vacancies. Let's start talking about where we think some coaches might go. A surprise that a lot of people might not see coming. We talked about him a little bit last night, about Jason Garrett to Jacksonville. Mr. Clappy himself, a guy who any owner knows. He'll do what the owner says. That's all he did when he was in Dallas. Why not Jason Garrett in Jacksonville? See what he can do to develop a team. A very young team. A pretty talented team, too. I think they missed at quarterback. I think they have a bust in quarterback. But maybe him to Jacksonville. I like Eric Bieniemy to Chicago. I've been saying that for a long time. Drew says, I don't know any team that wouldn't hire Tom. I agree. If Tomlin became available, every team in the league would halt their head coach search until he got hired. He would be able to interview with any team in the league he wanted to. There might even be some teams that interview him that still have a head coach. So, I agree. I don't know. Look, the Steelers would definitely keep Mike Tomlin. They're not going to let him go. I'm saying, what if Mike Tomlin walks away? I think that's where they would lose him, is if he just decided, hey, look, I just want to go explore other opportunities. I want to see if I could do something else. You know, see if I could go revamp a Bears organization and a guy like Justin Fields. If you're Mike Tomlin, you can ask for the world as a free agent head coach. You can be like, look, I want stock in the team. I want part ownership. And I want total control over my roster. And you'll get it. Any team would be dumb not to do it. So that's probably why you wouldn't coach for the Bears, because they would be dumb and not do it. Alpha Rob says, speaking of bust, how about Tua? I don't know that we can call Tua a bust just yet. But before he was drafted, I said it would be a horrible draft pick if the Dolphins picked him at 5. And then the Dolphins picked him at 5. And it hasn't been so great. Now, they did go on a run. They have been playing better football as of late. And that was in big part to Tua's play. So he's starting to get better. He's starting to develop. He's learning some things. But I don't necessarily call Tua a bust just yet. But like I said, and I said this before the draft this year, I said Trevor Lawrence to me is closer to Ryan Leaf than he is Tom Brady. And people laughed at me. So I don't know what you're looking at. I don't know what you're seeing. And what did he do in his rookie year? He went out and put up Ryan Leaf type numbers. Actually, I think he exceeded Ryan Leaf's numbers in a bad way. So I don't know that Tua is a bust. I 110% believe that Trevor Lawrence is a bust. I didn't think his game was going to translate well into the NFL. I think he was a college quarterback. And there's a lot of guys in the league that are like that, though. A lot of guys in the league that are college quarterbacks, and it doesn't translate. And you very rare that you find the Patrick Mahomes of the world who are losing quarterbacks in college and then just take the NFL by storm. So Alpha Rob says he hasn't shown you anything that made you say, okay, something is there. Are you talking about Trevor Lawrence, Alpha Rob? I haven't seen anything from Trevor Lawrence that made me say that this year. Nothing. I don't believe in Trevor Lawrence. I've watched him play. He doesn't make the right reads. He doesn't like getting hit, and he gets hit a lot in Jacksonville. I don't see anything from Trevor Lawrence that says, hey, you're going to be this successful guy. Alpha Rob says Tua. I've seen enough from Tua to say, yes, he's developing. There is something there. This little run that they've made over, the last 6-7 weeks before they got beat this past week has made me say, all right, you know what? Tua's doing something here. He's leading this team. They're making a push for a playoff spot. So there is something there in Tua. He is developing. He is going on that run. He is able to will his team to win. He does find a way to win when he needs to. So, yes, I do believe that Tua is going to be a serviceable starting quarterback in the NFL. But when you get picked at number 5 in the first round, you need to be more than a serviceable quarterback in the NFL. When you get picked at number 5, you need to be a top 10 quarterback in the league. And right now, Tua is not a top 10 quarterback in this league, and I don't know if he'll ever be that. So that's where I say that Tua is the bust. I don't think he's ever going to be what he was supposed to be prior to that hip injury. Actually, prior to that hip injury, I didn't think he was going to be what he was supposed to be. So, no, I don't see that from Tua, just like I don't see it from Trevor Lawrence. So, One Pride says, top 10 picks better be all-stars. Completely agree. Drew says, I think Tua's brother is better than him. Ooh. I don't think so. There have been cases where I've thought that the younger brother was better than the older brother, even though the older brother got all of the accolades and all of the attention. I remember Michael Vick was playing, and his brother was at Virginia Tech, and I thought his brother was a better quarterback. Granted, he was stupid and made a whole lot of mistakes, more than his brother even did, and never materialized in anything. But I thought Michael Vick's brother was going to be better than him. Some people can make the argument that Eli Manning is a better quarterback than Peyton Manning was. I mean, prior to going to Denver, Peyton Manning only had that one Super Bowl. That one Super Bowl in which the Bears kind of gifted it to him by deciding to play a zone defense in the second half. So there is an argument for Eli Manning to be better than Peyton Manning. But I don't know that you're going to get that with Tua and his brother. Alpha Rob says Tua looks small and thin with an average arm and speed. Yeah, he is small. Tua is small. That's been the knock on him since he was in college. It's the knock I had on him. I said he's too small to play in the NFL, and I know we have small quarterbacks that play in the NFL and play well. You look at Russell Wilson. You look at Kyler Murray. But Tua doesn't have those tangibles. Tua doesn't have the abilities of a Russell Wilson or a Kyler Murray. He's not fast enough, doesn't have a strong enough arm, and really doesn't have enough of a quarterback presence. So I agree. I agree with your assessment there, Alpha Rob. All right, guys. It's time for Combs eye test. So let's get that out there. Combs eye test coming up. My eye test tonight is going to be about what we're witnessing on Monday Night Football. It's about the charade that is Big Ben right now. And I like Big Ben. I've been a fan of Big Ben for a long time. Look, regardless of his shaky off-the-field issues that he's had, Big Ben as a quarterback has been fun to watch his entire career. He moves very well for a big guy, does all that stuff. But the guy refuses to come out and say that he's retiring. The guy refuses to come out and say that he's done and this is his last game in Pittsburgh, even though they're putting on this parade like this is his last game in Pittsburgh. Why not just come out and say it? Why not just come out and say, look, this is going to be my last game. I'm retiring at the end of the year. Thank you to the fans. I appreciate everything. Thank you to all my teammates. I love you guys. Blah, 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 blah. But instead, he's kind of leaving everything on tilt. Everything on tilt. And I don't understand why he just doesn't come out and say it. And why he doesn't come out and say it is because he wants the attention. He wants the publicity. He wants everybody to come out and say, oh, are you leaving? Oh, Big Ben, don't go. Come back. Stay. I think he's going to pull Brett Favre. Everybody's going to think he's leaving. And he's going to continuously come back. He's going to keep the organization on tilt until whenever it is, April, May, right before the draft, and say, yep, never mind, I'm coming back. I think that's what we're going to have here. Big Ben is going to pull a Brett Favre. But at any rate, I digress. Drew? Possibly. But we don't know. We weren't there. So, it is the end of the night. It is time for me to say goodbye. To all those watching on Roku TV, join us tonight live on YouTube, on Facebook. Join in on the comments so we can get you up on the screen. We can talk about everything you want. There's probably going to be a lot of solo shows over the next couple of months as Buck is transitioning into a new position at work. But we can make this work. All I need is you guys in the comments. You guys keep me talking for hours and hours and hours. So join me live. But until then, Alpha Rob, One Pride 40, Drew, Man Hour Nation, rise up.